You just imagine Jesus coming with fresh spiritual strength from moments of prayer, receiving that strength that comes to any one of God's followers when they're there in a moment of great surrender unto God. And he comes back and he meets with his disciples. And his disciples are there to embrace him, to encourage him, right? The disciples are there, yes, Jesus, we're praying for you, we're supporting you. We're like Aaron and Hur on either side of Moses, lifting up your hands. Here we are. Isn't that the kind of encouragement that Jesus received from his disciples then? No, not at all. Look at it, verse 37. And he came and found them sleeping. Wasn't that wonderful? Guys, here's your big job for the night. Watch and pray with me. And what did they do? They slept. And he said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus here is being very charitable. He's being very careful here in speaking to his disciples. Guys, I want to believe the best of you. Your spirit is willing. That's a more charitable assessment than I would have made of the disciples at that moment. I would question whether or not their spirit was willing. But he gives them this very charitable assessment. But notice how sternly at the same time. And there's Peter so boldly proclaiming, no, I'll fight for you, Jesus. Everybody else will forsake you. Everybody else will fail you. But not me, Jesus. I'll stand very strong for you. I'll support you in any attack. And Peter was very ready to do that. I believe Peter was ready to resist any attack, except for the attack of the sand. What happens again, verse 39? And again he went away and prayed, praying the same words. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. And they did not know what to answer him. And he came the third time and said to them, Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of the sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. You see, here at this critical moment, when he received absolutely no support from his disciples, Jesus could look across the valley. He could see the torches from the procession of soldiers led by Judas there ready to arrest him. And he knew now is the time. Now verse 33. And immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12. And with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard. And when he came, he went up with him at once and said, Rabbi! And he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. Struck at the fact that they came to arrest Jesus with a small detachment of police or soldiers or whatever you would call them, as a crowd with swords and clubs. They came and regarded Jesus as a dangerous man, and they came with great force to take him away. As well, Judas had no trouble finding him there in the Garden of Gethsemane. I'll give you my personal opinion. I can't really prove it. But I believe that Judas first went with that detachment of soldiers to the upper room. That's where Jesus was when Judas had left him. They went first to the upper room and found that Jesus was not there. And so what did they do? Judas said, well, if he's not in the upper room, I bet I know where he is. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's where we spend the nights when we're staying in Jerusalem this time of year. Let's go to the Garden of Gethsemane. And that's where they came. And so Judas said, listen, I'll let you know exactly which one of the 12 it is. It'll be the one that I kiss. And so Judas goes in tremendous, painful, bitter hypocrisy. And he goes up and he lays a kiss of greeting upon the cheek of Jesus. And he says, Rabbi, my teacher. That's what those words mean. My teacher. It's a cruel pretense. Verse 47. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled. And they all left him and fled. It's very interesting here, starting in verse 47, where it speaks about this one of the disciples who drew the sword and cut off the ear of the servant of the high priest. There's something very interesting that's missing from the text of the Gospel of Mark. What's missing here in Mark's account is the name of the particular disciple who did it. Well, whoever could that have been? Whoever would have been foolish and rash enough to make such an attack? Well, we know from the Gospel of John that it was Peter. And I think there's a lot I could say of this, but I'll just say there's two miracles at work. The first, it was a miracle that Peter was not cut into 100 pieces by the soldiers who came to arrest Jesus. Isn't that remarkable? Peter started the sword play, and yet he was unharmed. But it was also a very significant miracle because according to Luke, Jesus miraculously healed the cut off ear of this servant of the high priest, showing once again that he was the Messiah, even to those who arrested him for not being the true Messiah. And then even one more thing, and we'll conclude our text with this for a moment here, verses 51 and 52 it says. And a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body, and they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. There's just some seemingly random young man there in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the next thing we know, he's running away naked from this whole scene. What is this? Well, I think it's an important note here for just a few reasons. The first thing is it's showing us that Jesus was forsaken by everybody. Let's remind ourselves. The followers of Jesus numbered more than just the 12. There were actually, scores of followers of Jesus. There were the 12 disciples, of course, but there was a broader group than that. And apparently this young man was one of the broader group. But note the point here. Even a brave young man, brave enough perhaps to warn Jesus and his disciples of the coming arrest, at that critical moment, his clothing failed and his courage failed. I think we commonly live with this great awareness. Perhaps it's like a shadow over our lives for some of us. How far we fall short as followers of Jesus. And I'll speak to you all just for a moment here as if you are all followers of Jesus. I can look at you and tell you, you don't pray enough. You don't read your Bible enough. You don't tell enough other people about Jesus. You sin too much. You embarrass Jesus too much. Your courage for Jesus, on and on and on. It's very easy to point out in your life and in mine that we fall short very often. And we do. This is the truth. The good news is this. You are not saved by your faithfulness to Jesus. If you were, then you and I and all of us, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Our salvation hinges upon His faithfulness to us. So here at the end of this section of Mark, where Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, who's faithful? Is Judas faithful? No. Is Peter faithful? No. Is Mark faithful? No. Is Jesus faithful? Completely. Completely. I'm so grateful that my salvation rests upon the faithfulness of Jesus. And I'm so grateful that having received His faithfulness, it makes me more faithful. Not perfectly faithful. That's something God is continually refining in my life, and I hope in yours. But having received His faithfulness, it makes me more faithful than I would have otherwise been.